Welcome to the Control F5 series, where we look at teams that Ipswich Town will play next season. With only 2 games left to play, there's a lot of time between now and the start of the season in which we can look at the opponents that we know we're going to play next year and try and pick up some information that we wouldn't usually know. Now, first opponent that I can pick out, obviously fresh from promotion this season with less than 4 games to go. Lincoln City FC have risen dramatically from non-league to League One in 2 seasons. Consecutive promotions, cup runs, Cowley brothers, literally things that come to my mind just by thinking about them. So, with no further ado, I speak to Gary from the Stacy West blog, who gives us a bit more of an idea of what's going on at Lincoln City at the moment. Gary, firstly, tell me about your blog, so we just get a kind of sense of what you do.
So I've run the Stacy West blog for nearly 3 years now. We try and just produce typical blog type content, player analysis, do a lot of historical stuff as well. I've been nominated for the Football Blogging Awards 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
Haven't won because we always seem to come up against Premier League teams, which in a fan orientated vote does leave you at a disadvantage when you're in League Two. But thoroughly enjoy doing it.
Yeah. So Lincoln obviously just promoted, but let's just cast our minds back to a few seasons ago when Ipswich and Lincoln played each other in the FA Cup. I don't know if you can remember, probably fondly, but you came down to Portman Road, got a 1-1 draw, and then obviously the replay at your place, and you beat us 1-0 on the night, didn't you?
We did. It was 2-2 at your place, actually.
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, completely forgot.
Yeah. Tom Lawrence, I think, bagged twice for you, and he was probably the only saving grace that day.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. I mean, for us, that was part of the turning point. We'd been Oldham in the second round. We'd been on BBC, I seem to think, and a lot of fans suddenly became awake to the fact that Lincoln City were on the way up. So we started the season with 3,000 to 4,000, and after the Oldham game, and certainly after the Ipswich game as well, it was 7, 8, 9. And for me, the replay probably produced the single most memorable moment of that season. Yeah. Despite going up, everything, it was that last minute goal from Nathan Arnold. Still sends shivers up my spine even today. And I know Nathan. I chat to Nathan sometimes, and he marks it as his high point of his Lincoln City career as well.
And it's really weird because a lot of Ipswich fans would say that was the exact turning point for them. And we've been relegated to League One. You've actually now gained 2 promotions and you'll be playing in League One next season.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? Football works in weird ways and throws up all these different patterns. And when we came out of that game, I remember conversations being that, well, in a couple of years we could be playing Ipswich. And that was kind of the aspiration, in that we were hoping to get out of the National League. We were hoping to get out then of League Two. And then possibly if you guys came down. I mean, even as visitors, we could see that Ipswich were in some disarray at the time. There was no cohesion between fan and players. I think your own fans were singing, "You're getting sacked in the morning" to McCarthy, and sadly, it didn't happen straight away for you. So it's funny how these things turn around, but it'll certainly be one of the trips that I'm really looking forward to next season, without a doubt.
Yeah, in terms of going back to McCarthy, it's a common misconception in the national media that the fans wanted McCarthy gone because he was a boring dinosaur, but it was actually the football that was being played. We weren't playing outstanding football. We'd stagnated for 5 years, and probably an acceptance of that was relegation. To get rid of McCarthy, it was to actually, move in any direction as long as it wasn't in that boring direction. Would you agree that sometimes some fans do have to take boring football on the chin, but sometimes they do have maybe the right argument against boring managers like McCarthy?
Yeah, I can see the point. I mean, having not watched a lot of Ipswich, I couldn't say whether the football was boring or not, but I liken it perhaps to Pulis at Middlesbrough. If the football's not entertaining, you're paying to be entertained. Now, I mean, last time we were promoted to what is now League One was on John Beck in '98, and the football couldn't even be described as football. It was atrocious, front to back, straight in the danger area every time. I mean, one of the lads, Mark Hone, was substituted on then off within 5 minutes for not putting the ball in the area that John Beck wanted. But we took the promotion and we celebrated the promotion. If boring football's successful, I think that you can sometimes swallow it down. Yeah. But the second you fail to achieve anything, like Pulis at Middlesbrough, if he doesn't get in the playoffs, he's gone, because there's no safety net. If you're playing decent football and just fail, like with you guys, if McCarthy'd been playing nice football and you'd finished 20th, 19th, 18th, I think it would have been accepted. It's an interesting debate.
Definitely. Well, in terms of the Football League, we'll be playing in the same part of the pyramid next year. Congratulations for, on your part as a fan, obviously, to experience that as well. But what are you looking forward to, the most for League One next season?
Wow. Some of the trips are obviously mouth-watering. I mean, there's coming to Ipswich again on level terms. It's going to be phenomenal, not just because I'm talking to an Ipswich pod now, but it was a fantastic trip, a nice stadium, and it made us feel again. And that might sound odd, but when you've been playing Hayes and Yedding and Maidstone and Braintree, with the greatest respect, you go somewhere like Portman Road and you believe again. Yeah. And so there's that air of respectability. We're going to be, there's possibly Charlton, Portsmouth, Sunderland, one of those, or two of those might still be about, Bolton, some big games. It's also going to be nice because we're perhaps going to have a little bit more pick of the players in League Two. Yeah. Because there's some phenomenal talents in League Two. And it only takes one promotion to kind of give you a little bit of an edge in attracting those players. I mean, we won't attract, let's say, James Norwood, but there's every possibility that somebody like George Grant at Mansfield might be more attracted to come to Lincoln just for the level of football. I mean, we missed out on Tom Hopper, the Southend forward, in the summer. Yeah. He was in talks with us, but Southend, arguably not a bigger club than Lincoln. Southend fans might disagree, but he chose them for the level of football. So I think there's that kind of elevated status as well that's quite exciting. And it's just nice to see Danny and Nicky test themselves in another arena, a whole new set of teams to play. And I actually think we're better when we're the underdog. I think they perform better when they're the smaller club. So it plays right into our hands as well.
Definitely. We'll come on to Danny and Nicky in a moment, but we've got two players on loan with you currently who obviously may or may not have been involved, but can you tell us a bit more about Danny Rowe and obviously Jordan Roberts while they've been on loan at Lincoln?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Roberts I'll start with because we've barely seen him. He's been unlucky because he's I think, a wide player, or he can sit behind the striker, but he's never going to oust John Akindi. And the two lads out wide that we've got, Andrade and Anderson, have both been in fantastic form. So he's been really, really unlucky. Seen him once, he looked all right, but didn't tear trees up. Danny Rowe's different kettle of fish altogether. You won't meet a Lincoln City fan that doesn't want to sign him permanently in the summer. I mean, he's an exquisite footballer on his day. He's got a beautiful touch. He's driving runs. I think he started with 3 goals in his first 2 games. Tends perhaps sometimes to take his knocks quite badly. So if he gets an injury, he tends to have 2 or 3 games out. But I think he came billed as a winger. I don't know how you guys see him, but Danny's played him behind John Akindi, looking to overlap the central striker, and he's really picked that up and gone at it with gusto. I spoke to Danny a couple of weeks ago as part of the club programme, and he's just a very grounded, focused player. If Paul Lambert does let him move to us, obviously we'll all be delighted, but I think it would be a big mistake because I think he can be a strong player in League One.
I think a lot of our fans are still waiting to see if we could have Danny Rowe included in our squad. He's made a number of substitute appearances. I think the last one he actually made, he had a shot from about 30 yards outside the box, not outside the box, but 30 yards from goal, and it was tipped onto the bar by the keeper. Unfortunately, the keeper at the time was Paul Gallagher of Preston, who'd been moved in after their goalkeeper had been sent off. The thing is, Danny Rowe is technically a very gifted player, and we just haven't seen him yet at Portman Road. In the sense of Jordan Roberts, he made 10 or 11 appearances this season for Paul Lambert after coming in, but as a a stopgap for us, really. We were waiting to get a striker in January. We played him up top so he could cause as much trouble as possible. But it doesn't surprise me that he has struggled to get into the side. But ironically, he did have a good spell at, was it Crawley last season before? And it does surprise me that he hasn't broken into the squad in that sense. But obviously, if you've got players who are fit and firing, then you're not gonna sub them out for a lone player, really, are you?
No, exactly. I mean, the thing is, in terms of centre forwards, John Akindi's our striker. Now, he's not. People hear John Akindi and think, oh, he's that prolific guy who was at Barnet. But I mean, I think for us, he's actually scored fewer than two of our players in terms of open play. The rest have been penalties. But he's a big, powerful hold-up striker, which is crucial to the way that we play. Not necessarily a long ball, but you can go into his feet on a counter-attack and he can either drive forward or hold the ball up. So Roberts was only ever going to be back up for that. It was whether he was going to be able to sit him behind Akindi. But then Danny Rose done that with such gusto, and Shane McCartney, who we've had on loan from Bradford, scored some fantastic goals. So I think he only ever really came in to cover for injury, which is a shame for him because he looks happy watching pre-match and at half-time when he's warming up. He's obviously a nice, big, physical, able boy. But it's, when you're top of the league, it's hard to start making too many changes. And with Rowe and O'Hara coming in, Mark O'Hara from Peterborough, that was probably 2 changes, was just about enough to freshen the side up without breaking the rhythm.
Yeah, definitely, completely agree. Anyway, let's get back onto the Cowley brothers. We were sniffing about. Anyway, Ipswich fans hoped we were sniffing about to try and get them in replacement for Mick McCarthy in the summer. But to be honest, they've done an absolutely brilliant job at Lincoln, and the world is their oyster. I mean, they could go all the way, couldn't they, with Lincoln?
Yeah, they certainly could. I mean, just touching back on your interest in the summer, it was quite funny because I was with them at a civic event that they'd been nominated for. And there was lots of chatter at the time that Ipswich were one of the clubs that they were expected to say yes to, if anybody. And I think they'd be very particular. But we thought there was a career path that saw them go from Lincoln to Ipswich and then from Ipswich to West Ham.
Right.
Which was probably fanciful on the part of some fans, but when Ipswich come knocking a championship side and you've just finished 7th in League Two, you expect the manager to go. Now, whether there was any serious moves or not, I don't know. But it was certainly the first real moment of worry that we might lose them. It was also the last because speaking to them on that night, they were absolutely emphatic that they were staying put at Lincoln until they'd finished their journey. Now, I believe that they think their journey is championship football, be it one season and relegated like Rotherham. But I think that they can see that potential at Lincoln. Beyond that, yes, the world is their oyster. But let's not forget at the moment that they've had 2 years managing in the Football League. Other than that, they've been entirely in the National League. So they're learning as well. And we can see it as fans. You can see it in the style of football, the players that they bring on, maybe some of the changes that they make. But they're learning all the time. And the best route is always to learn on the job. So to go into League One and have a couple of seasons there. And I reflect that with Paul Hurst. That Paul Hurst jumped up very quickly from Grimsby. Then suddenly he was at Shrewsbury, more or less missed out League Two. Then he was 1 year at Shrewsbury, then he's up with you. And I just think there was too many big jumps in succession. Dean Keats is another, missed out League Two, flopped at Walsall. I think Danny and Nicky are very much method and process orientated in that they'll serve their time before they make the step up.
Yeah, 100% agree. And definitely on the Paul Hurst one, I couldn't agree more at all. In terms of next season then, just, as a fan, where do you think that Lincoln could possibly go? Because they do, would it be a third successive promotion?
I can't see the third successive promotion. I think that when you look at the championship, beg your pardon, when you look at League One, there's 3 very definite divisions within it. There's the top 5 this season, certainly, which is Charlton upwards, and those 5 teams are battling for the 3 promotion spots and we'll get them. Then there's the middle pack, your Doncasters, Petersburghs and Blackpool. But then from 12th down, from Oxford down, I think Lincoln could finish at the top of that particular pack. There's nothing that I've seen, and I mean I watch a lot of League One football, unfortunately, but there's nothing I've seen from the likes of Plymouth, Southend, Oxford, Walsall, Wimbledon, anybody like that at all, that makes me think that the squad we have right now wouldn't finish somewhere at the upper end of that pack, so somewhere, let's say, 13th or 14th in the division. That's not to be kind of bold and bolshy, because the league changes every year. Some of those teams will improve, but I would like to see us finishing somewhere around the top of the bottom half or the bottom of the top half. I think that's perfectly achievable.
Gary, in your words, do you think Ipswich may have a chance of bouncing back at the first bite?
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt whatsoever. And it's the same reason that the likes of Sunderland and Barnsley have been able to as well, because when you drop down into League One, you're a team that can have the pick of some of the better players. I've seen you linked, with instance, for James Norwood at Tranmere. If James Norwood leaves Tranmere and he's got a choice between Ipswich, Gillingham or Lincoln, he's going to pick Ipswich. And with some sensible management, I think that can certainly see you within the top 5. I wouldn't be as bold as to say top 2, because it's a very competitive league. But I can see some of your players this season, I think, who stepped up. And I'm looking at Gwion Edwards. I'm looking at the lad I can't pronounce from Accrington. I think Ellis Harrison is he with you still as well?
Yeah.
But these are players that can be very, very effective at League One and will only be better from the disappointment of failing at the Championship. And then when you've got somebody like Alan Judge, he can be your Aidan McGeady this year, because McGeady has been the difference for Sunderland between finishing, in my opinion, in the top 2 or outside the top 6. And once you've got a player like that who is unattainable to the Plymouths, the Lincolns, the Oxfords, the Southend's, I think there's every reason to be excited.
Gary, thanks very much, mate.
Pleasure.
Great to speak to Gary there with regards to Lincoln City next season. Lots of news with regards to players that have been on loan from Ipswich Town this year. Danny Rowe and obviously Jordan Roberts have been on loan at Lincoln since January. Danny's had a good spell and obviously made himself look attractive to other teams down in League 2. But can either of those players cut it in League 1 as Ipswich Town players? That remains to be seen. At the same time, can you leave a comment and let me know if you think players like Danny Rowe and Jordan Roberts are going to have a sniff in the Ipswich Town team next season? Other news with regards to that, obviously Lincoln are looking to come up and stabilise a position in League One, which I think they can do. That's my opinion. I think they've got the stability. They've got the managers. If you look at the Cowley brothers and the hard work that they've done to get Lincoln to this position, it's just phenomenal. And I think that they can bed down that mid-table place that Gary's so fondly after. So yeah, I do agree with Gary, and especially when it comes to Ipswich Town next season. Gary believes that Ipswich's bounce back ability is certain. We can do it in some way, shape or form. He said top 5. He wouldn't be as bold as saying top 2, which I agree with. But in the same sense, it's a very competitive league at the same time. We need to look at our opponents and we need to be respectful towards them, and we need to see out games completely, something we haven't seen yet from a Paul Lambert side, but that is yet to come. I think Paul's the right man to take Ipswich Town forward, and this summer is going to be very important to the progress of the club. So we just have to wait and see, really. But Lincoln promoted to League One, Ipswich Town relegated. That's the first of the Control F5 series out of the way. Leave your comments below. If there's anything you want me to ask or any clubs you want me to do next, then just give me a shout. But in the meantime, come on you Blues.